This is Mommying While Muslim, recorded live and unedited. Watch as Zeba and Uzma record their podcast, see their reactions, and find out for yourself what all the buzz is about.
One of our sponsors this month is Guidance Residential. Take advantage of their spring refinance special and get $500 off with your refinancing. Go to gr.link/RAM_MWM_2021. Back to also sponsor our podcast this month is Muslim Kids TV. This is coded primarily by Muslim moms to provide both secular and Islamic games, so you're not going to be sorry that your kids are hooked on their electronics this summer. Use code MK2021 and receive 25% off any subscription you sign up for. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mommyingwhilemuslim. This is Uzma Jaffrey.
And this is Zeba Hassan, still like frenzied and a hot mess today. Like car hopping, kid to kid, trying to put everything together. I mean, now we're in this, girl, like, listen, we're in this deconfinement period. Everything is back to normal, quote unquote, as far as activities. And I have, taken for granted a couple of things. The fact that my husband is always in the background, which I know I've kind of jokingly complained about, but I love the fact that he's kind of there if I have to hop out and I have my littles and whatever the case may be. And I've taken for granted my older daughter, who's always here, except for this week, has had basketball camp, so hasn't been home. And I have, in full fairness disclosure, underestimated how much having them be in the background really has helped me get things done, get to places, get to my doctor's appointments and this and that. And it's a lot of struggling to kind of get it all fit in when I don't have the backup support. My younger two are still too young to be left home alone for any length of period of time. Plus, you know, they don't feel comfortable yet. So part of having the kids be left home alone, it varies from state to state, but it also, the child themselves has to want to stay home alone and feel comfortable. They're just not there, partly because of COVID, let's just be real, and they're so used to having people around. But I am like a hot mess, crazy, frenzied person, and I admit it. And that's my long-winded way of saying I'm still catching my breath. So I'm going to kick it back over to you, Uzma, to see how your week has been. Hopefully a little bit easier than mine, but I know you went on a little mini vacation this week.
Yeah, we wanted to get to the beach because we live in an oven. So, you know, of course, it was funny because it felt like every 100 miles or every 200 miles, the temperature would drop 10 degrees. And we're just like, oh my gosh.
Oh.
So at the time we got to California, it was like 40 degrees cooler than where we live. And it was significant. Like we took our jackets, right? So we look like idiots walking around California with our jackets on in like 72-degree weather.
Oh my gosh, girl. But comparatively, you're probably feeling like I'm cold.
Yeah, we felt like we were in the freezer section of Costco. So that was, you know, and of course we get there, we're on the beach, and my kids, my little desert rats, are like, ew, sand is gross. And we didn't get to be on the beach. That's not what they wanted.
Aww.
They just wanted to go to an amusement park because it's been so long. And I am convinced that California is going to have a spike in COVID cases because there's no mask mandate inside the parks. Isn't that crazy?
No, that is definitely a stressful situation. And Joe is sending me texts that like apparently my connection is really bad. So hopefully we don't get lost, and inshallah we won't. But I am so thankful that you were able to get away a little bit, even if your kids didn't want to go in the sand. And I don't blame them at all because I hate the feel of sand. It's kitty litter, girl. It's kitty litter. And why am I walking on kitty litter? No, thank you.
Sand is great.
I'll pass on the sand too.
It's awesome. We have to.
And do you still have sand coming out of your suitcases and your stuff today?
No, because we didn't get to go on the beach. They stayed away from the sand.
Oh, okay, good. I am with you. I am with you guys. Tell your children I am with them because I hate the feel of. I love the ocean. love the feel of the water, but I hate the sand and I hate it coming out of crevices that you just don't want. There is no sand. There's places where sand should not go.
Right.
And I'm just not into cleaning that out of my children's bottoms or other places anytime soon. But I wanted to ask you a little bit about how your book status is
Oh, my
going
book.
on. I'm
Okay.
totally calling you out here and
It's
making you
probably not
accountable.
good if the editor stops reading it and says, I can't read anymore. And it's like, all it
We
is
need a
opinion.
break.
You have too many opinions. And I was like, well, that's the whole point of the book, is my opinions. Why would I write anybody else's opinion? Because I'm trying to promote mine. So yeah, we are going to be doing a rewrite, which is
Okay, well, that's okay.
yeah, it's okay. I survived. I have a thick skin, and I'm going to take that constructive criticism and feedback and, fix a lot of the things. I knew that at certain points, like I needed to go back, but I wanted a professional eye on it. That's there. And the good news is, like, I did my spell check really well. So
Okay,
she didn't
good.
have to fix all of that.
Oh, well, I love that. And you're a great editor because she always edits a lot of my stuff too. And now you know what it feels like when I'm getting yours getting edited by Dr. Uzma Joffrey. It doesn't feel fun, and you have to have a thick skin about that. But before we go into your soapbox, I did find out this week that my lovely, amazing, and I promised her I would say this, my beautiful little niece, her name is Abigail Nyla. She secretly listens to our podcast on her iPad when nobody is at, like when she's in the corner, and my sister caught her and she was like, "Oh, I'm just listening to Kalajani." So I wanted to say, Abby, if you're listening, I love you. She fell off of her scooter yesterday. So she's apparently one of our fans, Ozma, my
I love
little
you.
9-year-old niece.
And I hope the
And
screams
she
like are not that bad.
I know. I hope it's not that bad, but I did want to, I promised I would call her out because she does listen to us apparently religiously. And so I wanted to ask you today, Uzma, what is our soapbox for this week?
So our soapbox is hashtag We Stand with Huda, Huda. So a high school senior of Pakistani descent was asked to give a speech at graduation at a particular school in Long Island. She did that. And, like a lot of our graduating seniors have been talking about, they've been talking about the AAPI movement. They've been talking about all kinds of social justice things in these speeches. Now, Huda wrote the speech because she planned to bring attention to a lot of social justice platforms, campaigns, and causes. And what ended up happening is, back in my day, the principal would edit it and look over it, make sure that you're not saying anything crazy. Initially, the principal did do this and said, I did do it. So Huda gives the speech, and in it, remember, she's of Pakistani descent. Her parents are from Pakistan. So she talked about Palestine and, didn't say anything inflammatory. She was talking about the apartheid and genocide that is going on over there. At the time, the Gaza bombings were, fresh. Well, the first wave of Gaza bombings, at least. So at the actual graduation, the crowd of parents started yelling at her and screaming at her to get out of this country, attacking her parents to do the same. So because of all the backlash that came from the parents, obviously they contacted the school, and then the school says she went off script. And she's like categorically denying it, saying, I did not go off script. This was the script I had, and I said it, and you approved it. And now the principal is reneging, not answering CARE New York's call to apologize to the student, even though, well, the principal wrote a letter to the entire parent and student body apologizing for subjecting them to the words of the student and alleging that she went off script. So CARE obviously is demanding an apology and demanding protection for our Muslim students because anti-Semitism is a real thing. got it, But so is Islamophobia. Anti-Muslim is a big thing. Those of us who have lived through it our whole lives know that, and those of us who have experienced it tenfold since 9/11 know that very well. So these students who are born into a post-9/11 world are getting the crux of it, and for them to be able to speak their mind should be protected just as well as it is for any other student of any other faith. Shame on this principal who actually has a PhD in education and isn't giving an apology where it's due, and is not protecting Muslim students, not at the school, not at school events, and certainly not after the fact. That's our soapbox for today.
Wow, it's, having a child about to graduate this year, I can't even imagine what that must have felt like. This is just a very stressful situation for everybody, to be honest with you. And these kids do have opinions, and they're actually well informed, and they're reading more about it. And whether or not we agree with what they're feeling or thinking, we as parents should, help support and provide a platform for these kids to air, to have a place for them to say what they have to say, whether we agree with it or not. So yeah. I am hoping Huda is going to be okay, and it sounds like she's, she's standing her own. So I think she's going to have a great future for her, inshallah. But we are continuing the speaking of getaways, right? We are continuing this overseas mom expats. Some of us are starting our planning. I don't know about you, but keeping a little bit of a notebook, and we're trying to promote some of these moms that have lived overseas, but there are some of these moms that are in the planning process, and we want to know how they're planning, why they're planning, and maybe even all of us go for an extended trip together, see how it's going to be. Do you want to try to be an expat, Uzma? I don't know. We can.
I would love to. I have dreams of being an expat.
Yeah, we can start thinking about it. But, my dear friend Aseel, who I consider part of my new my mom village here in the DMV area, has been planning to move to Turkey for some time, even though I've been sad and trying to tell her not to. But, I have heard her research and have talked to her pretty openly. And I have to say, I wanted to bring her on today to kind of talk about this for other people that are kind of starting to think about the process. She is a mama of 2 boys, 8 and 10. She has lived in the DC area for the past, I think, 15 plus years. She's very well known in the area for her social justice and civic engagement field, where she's done a majority of her career. She arrived in the U.S. as a Palestinian refugee, believe it or not, and she's resettled in North Carolina with her family. But today she is going to be speaking to us about what it's like to raise a Muslim family in the U.S. in the ever-changing landscape of the politics, social things, social injustices, and why she might be considering a move abroad to raise her family. So Aseel, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for being a part of my mama journey, and I love that I get to share this platform with you today. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, Aseel. Welcome.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you so much for having me on air today.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and we know that you're doing the mom thing too, so we'll try not to, keep you too long away from the kids. But we usually kick off by asking our guests to tell us a little bit about their kids, whatever they're comfortable sharing, and their mommying philosophy.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have the privilege of raising 2 little boys in Northern Virginia, ages 8 and 10, and it has been such a journey for me because I grew up, I've been raising my children really without a village for the first majority of their years growing up as babies. And my brainstorming of moving overseas really started with the birth of my first child, realizing that I didn't have any family help, that we were not in a financial situation at the time to afford domestic help, and feeling that that being a mommy in the United States is brutal. It's full of isolation and loneliness, and your employer isn't, it's not going to have accommodations that are necessary for you to be able to work both full-time and to be able to be a full-time mommy in a way that is available in other countries overseas. So the idea of moving overseas and raising our family overseas started from 10 years ago when I first had my first child. And it really stemmed from that feeling of not having the support systems that are available in other countries.
That makes perfect sense.
And so, yeah, and it grew, like as they grew, my needs for wanting to go overseas have grown, and we've brainstormed about it, my husband and I, for many years, and who knows if we will ever make the full jump. But there's no way to create something or manifest something unless you start to plan it and visualize it in your mind. And we've toyed with a lot of different places overseas, but have sort of been hovering around the idea of Turkey for a lot of different reasons. But one of them is that it's an international city. There's a huge expat community between Syrian refugees and Afghan refugees and people from Europe wanting to come over and enjoy the beautiful, amazing weather. And the fact that they have lots of international schools and the weather is really good. And if you're coming over with your US dollar, if you're able to work remotely, which has become much more of a reality post-pandemic, where more and more jobs are going completely remote, it becomes this thing that lights up in your head that, oh, actually, we could maybe make this a possibility at some point. And so, there's a lot of different things that we've researched about moving to Turkey in particular. And one of them is that you're in it as a society together. Your village is not just your family. Your village is everybody, from the guy at the grocery store to the teacher in your kid's school to your friends. Everybody's sort of in it together, and you're not parenting in a silo. And I know that American independence and American self-reliance is so strong in our society here in the United States that is something that people will probably be very uncomfortable with. No one wants someone else to parent their child, quote unquote, in the United States. But when you are in a society where that's the norm, and you see a mom, for example, who's struggling, she's holding her infant child, her 2-year-old is running around, and because it's completely normal, the waiter may start playing with the 2-year-old and distract them while mommy finishes getting the diaper changed or whatever. That's completely normal there, folks just being able to give unsolicited advice, which is frowned upon here in the United States, but over there, it might
can you imagine?
like unsolicited advice. Yeah, like you're telling me how to raise my kid. But actually, some of the best advice I've ever gotten has not been from a mommying blog or from like a book that I've read. It's from other moms that are living my reality and maybe are a few years ahead of me. I've gone to Zeba many a times because she's got older kids than I do, and say like, so what do you do about this and what do you do about that? And that's been my most helpful information versus like reading it in What to Expect When You're Expecting. Let's be honest. And so
well, that's why
like
she stopped that too,
idea,
because I scared her. Right, Aseel?
I honestly stopped it too because it is so hard to have children in this country. Yeah, that's actually the real honest reason. We wanted a family of 4. We wanted a family, we wanted a lot of children, but we're like, we live in such an expensive area of the United States. My husband has a visual disability that keeps him from driving, so we cannot live out in the country. We have to live in an urban setting for all of the different accommodations. So if you want those kind of accommodations, you're going to have a much more expensive lifestyle. Hence, you're going to be able to afford less kids. I mean, it's just, it's one of those cycles. So so this is kind of where we're at right now.
That's crazy. So tell us a little bit, like in your intro, Zeba said some really interesting things that obviously had, my ears buzzing and wanting more. Tell us a little bit about your family background and why, your country of origin isn't going to be the place that you've chosen to move your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am ethnically Palestinian, but I've never been to Palestine. I am actually from Gaza, but my family predominantly was in Kuwait, and we then left as refugees during the Gulf War. So we're like refugees twice removed, and when we came to resettle in North Carolina, we were in this community of other Palestinian refugees together. And so where would I go back to? I wouldn't be able to go back to Palestine. Mm-hmm. My husband is Egyptian, but Egypt is not a stable country, and it has a lot of political corruption and all kinds of things. And so, you have to sort of juggle in your mind, like, where would be the safest place where we would feel the most welcome. And so it, for now it's Turkey. Who knows? Maybe someday it'll be Pakistan. Who knows? Right?
Yeah.
But for now, that's the place where we've really felt like, okay, we would be able to go and be greeted and be respected and not feel like outsiders, and just, not having to explain your cultural background constantly, because there's lots and lots of people like you there.
For our kids, it's like we don't have to check the labels. They want to go to a country where they don't have to read the labels all the time. For
That's exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. You don't have to worry about, there's pork in your food, or that, conversations that we already know culturally are completely inappropriate for our community. That even the most atheist person in Turkey, because of the culture, will not be talking about specific subjects. Even if you are, non-secular, you don't follow any religion, the culture says you're not going to have your boyfriend come over for dinner. You're not going to have your girlfriend come over for dinner. It's just because it's a cultural thing, that there are certain expectations in that society, whether you are a religious Muslim person or not, and people are doing the same things as you, and you're not the oddball who my parents say, I can't have a girlfriend, or I can't have a boyfriend, or, I actually have to marry somebody of the opposite sex. All the things that we just, are understood within our community, but they're going to have real conversations about these things outside of our community here in the United States. And it makes it a lot more difficult because you're always the one that's different.
Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you this. So, just to play devil's advocate, do you feel like you have to protect them? Like, is there a world where in overprotecting our children, and I go do this as well, right? Like, we all have those moments where we're sitting there like, how much do we want to tell? How much would it, every single one of us, no matter how quote unquote expert of a mom, you always start second guessing yourself. Do you feel in putting them in situations where they are in the majority, the fact that the world is more of a global arena nowadays because of the internet and other types of technological advances, do you feel like you're doing them a disservice by not necessarily thinking about those 1, 2, 3 steps ahead as we start moving towards more of that global economy?
Right. No, and we currently do live in a global economy that includes Turkey as one of the G20. So Turkey is one of the top economies of the world. So they're not off the grid, right? We're not going to a remote island where the global economy is not.
That's where I want to go. That's where I want to go, actually.
Right.
That's actually what I want to do. But that's another top podcast.
Right. So it is part of that global economy. But what it is that culturally, everybody gets to know these things, right? At one point or another. The only difference is that in the United States, we introduce all these concepts so early in their life. By kindergarten. Mm-hmm. By kindergarten, kids are learning about homosexual married couples. And it's like, I don't need my 5-year-old to know about that just yet. I need their forefront to, their fourth front of their brain to be a little bit more developed before we introduce concepts that are really difficult to discuss and tackle and understand and comprehend, and having giving them that much power when they're so little to make decisions about their life that will impact them for the rest of their lives when they are not fully matured enough to actually understand what it is that they're doing. The rest of the world is in that direction, but our Middle Eastern or Muslim countries are about 20 years behind, or at least 30 years behind. So by then, my kids will be grown up, and then they can make their own decisions.
Well, I don't have to worry about it.
I'll worry about my grandchildren, right? I'll have to worry about my grandchildren. No, but I mean, listen, having said all of this, like we definitely, every year that passes by, we think more and more seriously about making such a move. At the same time, we also understand that there are huge benefits to living in the United States that we cannot overlook. One of them is freedom of speech. Whether we like it or not, everybody is allowed to say what they need to say in some way, shape, or form. There are, of course, lines, and there are things that you cannot surpass because, then you will disappear. But in general, we do have the freedom of speech. And we also have accommodations in a huge way that's for folks with disabilities and with different developmental delays. And I have both those things in my family. My husband has the vision impairment. My son is on the autism spectrum, and I know that the services that I will find in the United States, I will not find in Turkey yet. But maybe Allah wants me to go there so that I can become the advocate for autistic children there, and I will be the one to be able to introduce. Allahu Alam. But I do know that if that's one of the things that I'm thinking about, I understand that there are advantages to being in the United States that have not gotten to Turkey. Just like, there are advantages to being in Turkey that I'm not going to ever be able to find in the United States. And it's really weighing the pros and cons and figuring out, like, is it worth the move or is it not? And at some point there will be a line drawn and it says, maybe it is absolutely worth it because this we no longer feel comfortable enough staying. So,
yeah. So, the title of this particular podcast is How to Be an Expat. So tell us, how have you started the research? What did that entail? And what more do you want to get lined up or need to get lined up in order to make the move?
Yeah, absolutely. So you don't want to be moving to a country going blind. You need to understand a lot of different systems of things that will impact your family directly. And so you will go through them and say, what are my top priorities? What do I care about? I care about schools. So I've researched the heck out of schools. I care about weather. If I'm going to move from the DC area and I hate the winters here, well, I'm not going to go to another area of Turkey that has the same exact weather. I'm going to go and live by the Mediterranean, by the beach, yes. The thing, right? So you have to figure out what is it that is important to you when you're looking for a place to live. The affordability and Turkey is obviously very, very affordable when it comes to, food, housing, transportation. I mean, it's literally dirt cheap, and the dollar is very, very strong there. But what isn't cheap is private education. And so you have to budget for that and figure out, is it worth it? I'm going to be paying an extraordinary amount for private education. Okay, but my housing is like one hundredth of the cost, or my food is organic and natural and also 1/100th of the cost. So, trying to figure out those things. So do your research. I have joined every expat Facebook group in Turkey that you can imagine for almost every city that exists in Turkey. I listen to YouTube videos about expats that have lived there just to see, what their experience has been like. I read mommying blogs for those that live in Turkey that moved from the United States because I want to get a full picture. I don't want to go blind. And then we are heading there this summer. And we'll be there for 3 weeks, inshallah, exploring and figuring out, do we really want to do this? This is the moment of truth. We're going to go and, test the waters and see.
I'll let you guys know, for those watching, that Zeba had to go get a throat swabbed because apparently it's still strep season in the DC metro area. So she's got to go take care of a kid. So will this be your first trip to Turkey?
No, it'll be our second trip. Our first trip ever was on our honeymoon, my husband and I. And we were there only for 10 days. And we weren't there with the focus of we might live here. We were just there to, live our lives and have fun. So this will be a different kind of trip. It'll be also to have fun, but also, to think out loud with ourselves. Is this something that we actually want to do?
And maybe connect with some of those resources that are going to be critical for your particular family, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep.
So we had a mom on last week whose first trip to the country she moved to was like the trip to move there. I was like, that's pretty incredible.
Wow, that's brave. That is
super brave.
Where did she move to? Where did she go? Spain. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Granada. So
that is amazing.
That's already up if anybody wants to hear that. So that, incredible. She was talking about some of the visa issues and paperwork. Have you found that to be as challenging? Considering where you live, I would think it would be a little bit easier, but maybe that's just my naivete.
So for Turkey, as a visitor, you don't need a visa in advance. You can get that at the airport. If you want to stay for longer than your 3-week visit, you have to get something called an ikamat, which is the residency permit, and you have to extend it. If you want to become a permanent citizen, there are tracks for that. Turkey makes it really easy. If you are willing to invest into any kind of property that's thousand in
whether it's residential or commercial, and then you basically have bought your residency, right?
basically, yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the mommying blogs that I was reading is saying that, a lot of people in Turkey don't have 401ks. That's not their concept of retirement. They'll buy plots of land or gold. And that is, that tangible property is what they will then sell in their late stage of life, and that's what they'll live off of. And so, buying property, buying gold, that's very common in Turkey, and reselling and all of that. That's the way to go there.
Yeah, arguably that's a lot of Muslim cultures. I've noted that that's what they invest in. It's always gold and property. Yeah, you're right. They don't usually have retirement accounts because they're usually self-employed. They also don't have health insurance. But the good news, now Turkey, as part of the EU, do they have national health care?
They do. They have fantastic health care that is super cheap. You can actually purchase the private health care, which is also cheap if you're coming in with US dollar. And they have some of the best doctors and best health facilities in the world. People come from all over the world to get treatments in Turkey. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, it's a really great choice when you think about it.
You're selling it really well right now. So, like, what do you look forward to? Yeah, seriously. What do you look forward to the most in making this move abroad? What do you want to get out of it?
I think it's definitely the slower pace of life. One of the things that I actually really was thankful for during the pandemic was that we got to slow down. And I was like, it shouldn't take a global pandemic for us to live a slower pace of life. There must be something else, right? There must be some other solution. And, in Turkey or in any really like less developed country, it just seems like their rate of life is slower. And I think that would be one of the most important things that I would want. The other thing is that if we could afford to live by the Mediterranean Sea, to live by water, in the United States, for you to want to live by water, you're going to have to, just have a lot of money. In Turkey, right, exactly. You want to live right by in San Diego, right by La Jolla Beach, you're going to be a millionaire, right? But in Turkey, that's it's a lot more possible to do that. So I would love to be able to just wake up and be able to stroll to the beach. So
that's amazing. So yeah, you're excited because you're so excited about that. That's awesome. So on the flip side of that, what is something that you fear the most about going overseas? Because a lot of us get hung up on the what ifs and, the fear, like, what if my dream turns out to be a really bad decision? Things like that. But what is your biggest fear?
I will say 100% that my biggest fear is the social stigma that comes with having a child with autism. For sure, 100%. We have come a long way in the United States in terms of autism awareness. Autism rocks. People love people with autism. We've come a really long way in the United States. Turkey's nowhere near that. I don't even think that they diagnose it on a, normally. It's not a diagnosis that they're very aware of. If you are somebody with autism, and in their mind, the spectrum begins and ends with being verbal or nonverbal. They don't have, they can't conceptualize a high functioning autistic kid who looks and acts quote unquote normal, but really is struggling with a lot of things. They don't, that's really hard at this point. So I think that is the one thing that really puts a pause on, on us just moving full force and jumping in and, that fear for your child, because you're not going to care about yourself as much as you're going to care about your children. And I don't want to traumatize my child unnecessarily.
Yeah, no, that sounds right. So on that note, have you talked to the kids? Because, at 8 and 10, they're old enough to kind of discuss major family decisions. What are their thoughts about moving abroad?
Yeah, so we have talked a lot about the idea. We've never given them a timeline. We've just said, this is somewhere that we're really seriously considering moving. We're going to go visit and we're going to check it out and see if we like it. We want them to be part of this process because, again, we don't want to pull the rug from underneath them and then wake up one day and be like, guess what, guys, we're moving and we're going to change cultures and language and, good luck. We don't want to do that. We want to prep them as much as possible. And so as much as I'm prepping myself and my husband's prepping himself, we try to introduce them to the different things. And we'll go to Turkish restaurants here. We'll listen to Turkish language videos every once in a while just to get them, accustomed to the idea. If we never end up moving, Uzma, we're going to have just this abundance of information about Turkey that's absolutely useless. Unless we move.
I don't think it's useless.
We actually do this move.
What information is useless? I have yet to know. That's awesome. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So, are you still working right now?
I am. Yes, I actually work with Islamic Relief USA, and I work as their advocacy campaign specialist. So I will be and the beauty about Islamic Relief is that the main headquarters is Islamic Relief Worldwide. It's based out of the UK, and there are branches all over the world, basically, and they do have a branch in Turkey of Islamic Relief Worldwide. So if it ever came to the point where I we do the move and I still want to be employed, I would look into that, or any other humanitarian organization. Thankfully, my skill set is transferable pretty much anywhere.
That's good, alhamdulillah, because that's something that I worry about. It's like, how does that work? How does licensure and accreditation and all of that work in other parts of the world? Will I still be able to do what I love, or do I have to put myself on hiatus professionally? So that's really an important question, and I think that's a big hiccup that a lot of people don't want to overcome. And certainly some of the moms that have been on this month have had to do that for a little bit, and they felt like they were sacrificing for their kids because, as you said, we're doing it for them in order to, improve their opportunities and certainly not to traumatize them. So that's really awesome. If somebody was thinking about going overseas, what are the top 3 things you would tell them to do?
I would tell them to do their research before they go and make sure that they are looking at the things that are the most important to them, and that'll be unique for every family. I would tell them to actually go to the place and visit before they make the jump, because it is a very costly expenditure to go to move yourself overseas. And I would say to also, once they make that decision, pray istikhara. Once you get that green light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have tawakkul and just, have your trust and faith that everything will be okay, because, your intentions are all about, just making a better life for you and your family, to be able to have more ibadah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Just set your intentions and tawakkul and just let it, go. Inshallah.
That's awesome. I love that. I think that's good advice for all of us, especially those of us who are, as I said before, too scared that, we open the door to shaitan every time we say what if, and, Allah made a big world for us. Let's go out and, see it, experience it. That's how life happens. So we can be the, bint batutas of our generation, which would be awesome.
Exactly.
So we have, during our closing segment, typically Zeba runs a quick fire challenge. Today, I'm going to attempt doing it for the very first time.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. Awesome. I love this question. What are you reading right now?
The Explosive Child. How to deal with a dysregulated child that may be on the autism spectrum.
Okay, The Explosive Child. I'm going to have to read that one too. What was your favorite subject in school?
English.
English. Oh man, we're connected on another level. Totally. Okay, this is cool. If someone were to play you in a movie, who would you want it to be?
Oh goodness, Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Oh,
why not?
Can't go wrong with that. Yeah, that's awesome. All right, and then we have a few seconds, so final question. What's the first career you dreamed of having as a kid?
I think I've always wanted to be a mom.
Good answer. Yeah, and you didn't have to say that just because you're on our podcast.
No, really. Truly. That was the first job, quote unquote, that I wanted to be a mom.
I love it. That's awesome. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
we wish you the best of luck on your continued research on Turkey and have a safe trip. And we hope that it's fruitful and that you'll update us and let us know when you're going, because then we're going to come visit you and stay at your place.
Sounds great.
Follow.
Absolutely. I
Thanks so
will.
much for doing this
Ahlan
with
wa
us.
sahlan.
We love it. Have a great rest
You're,
of the day.
thank you so much for having me. Thank you. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend. Take
You
care.
too. Assalamu alaikum. One of our sponsors this month is Guidance Residential. Take advantage of their spring refinance special and get $500 off with your refinancing. Go to gr.link/RAM_MWM_2021. Back to also sponsor our podcast this month is Muslim Kids TV. This is coded primarily by Muslim moms to provide both secular and Islamic games, so you're not going to be sorry that your kids are hooked on their electronics this summer. Use code MK2021 and receive 25% off any subscription you sign up for.